This is a labor camp in Siberia where German prisoners of war are held. Although there are no fences or regular guards, no one dares to escape, because even if someone manages to escape, in the freezing cold of -40 degrees in the Arctic Circle, without food and warmth, they would freeze or starve to death in no time. But this Nazi soldier does not believe in fate. He is determined to break free and return home to his wife and daughter. Soon, Clemens Forell gets an opportunity to escape. He first follows the conveyor belt and manages to slip out. Then he kicks away the wooden plank under the wheels and quickly climbs into a coal car. The coal car starts moving slowly, and as Clemens Forell looks at the vast starry sky of the night, he can't help but smile secretly. Finally, he can go home. But the next moment, the coal car suddenly gets stuck and stops because of a wooden stake. Clemens Forell has no idea what's happening outside, so he cautiously peeks out. That's when a Soviet sentry spots him. The consequence of escaping here is being locked up in an open-air dungeon. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't cooperate. Relentless rain mercilessly beats down on him. Yet, even in such extreme cold weather, Clemens Forell persists for 3 days and nights. But that's not the worst part. When the prison director releases him, he smugly tells him, "Your comrades are waiting for you." It's only when Clemens Forell returns to the mine that he understands the meaning of those words. He sees his fellow inmates, each with a fierce look in their eyes, holding clubs and forming 2 rows. Because of his escape, they all went hungry for 3 days as well. This innocent punishment drives them to raise their angry clubs and brutally beat the weakened Clemens Forell. Eventually, he collapses. It's only when someone intervenes that Clemens Forell is taken to the infirmary. The doctor who treats him is also a prisoner of war, but fortunately, he shares the same ideals as Clemens Forell and greatly admires his courage to escape. So, he provides him with dedicated medical care. However, Clemens Forell pleads with the doctor to help him escape once again. The doctor tells him that it is impossible to escape from this place located in the Arctic Circle of Siberia. In the past, anyone who attempted to escape here usually ended up dead. The doctor reveals a shocking secret to Clemens Forell. Even those who have no intention of escaping will eventually die. This is because they dig for heavy metals every day, and prolonged exposure to lead will inevitably lead to death by lead poisoning. Since death is inevitable anyway, the doctor suggests taking a chance on trying to escape for better luck. Determined to help until the end, the doctor decides to assist Clemens Forell in escaping. He quickly takes off his sweater and retrieves fur boots and warm clothes from the cupboard. Clemens Forell immediately puts on the clothes. The doctor informs him that there are hidden supplies of food along the railway line and hands him a handgun, urging him to use it when necessary. These provisions were originally prepared by the doctor himself for his own escape. However, a month ago, he was diagnosed with cancer, and with his weakened condition, he would not be able to withstand the extreme cold weather. The doctor also gives Clemens Forell a lunchbox with his home address written on it, entrusting him to inform his family of his death if he is fortunate enough to successfully escape. With that, Clemens Forell sets foot on the path of escape once again under the cover of night. The next morning, the prison director realizes that Clemens Forell is missing and rushes to the doctor's room to question him. He discovers that the doctor had already sacrificed himself for his fellow countrymen, while Clemens Forell, filled with conviction, braves the vast expanse of snow and wind. Meanwhile, the prison director orders a search within a 30-kilometer radius. However, despite several days of searching, the soldiers find no trace of Clemens Forell. Everyone assumes he is already frozen to death, but the warden believes he is still alive and orders the soldiers to continue expanding the search area. On the 9th day of his escape, Clemens Forell suddenly noticed a sled chasing after him from behind. Seeing this, he sprinted away. However, in his haste, he dropped his backpack, and as the sled quickly crawled up to him, he slipped and fell, ending up sprawled on the ground. But to his surprise, when the sled passed over him, he realized he was unharmed. Startled, he realized that the entire incident had been a hallucination he created in his mind. Looking at the endless expanse of ice and snow around him, Clemens Forell felt bewildered. He couldn't predict how much longer he could endure, but as his remaining food supply was nearly depleted, despairing, he knelt down in the snow, praying for some divine intervention to provide him with food. However, in the barren Arctic Circle, there was nothing but snow as far as the eye could see. In this state, Clemens Forell had no choice but to continue dragging his exhausted body for a few more days. Eventually, his strength gave out, and he collapsed from hunger and fatigue. He couldn't tell how much time had passed when, in a dreamlike state, he faintly heard a strange sound. Eagerly following the sound, he discovered a seal not far away. It was as if he had glimpsed hope once again. He immediately pulled out a handgun from his pocket, desperately steadying his trembling hands, and fired several shots at the seal. Unfortunately, his marksmanship was terrible, and he missed every shot. Seeing the seal about to escape, Clemens Forell hastily got up to chase it. However, he accidentally stepped into the icy water, but he endured the pain and continued the pursuit. In the end, he was lucky enough to hit the seal. He used a small knife to cut open the seal's belly and then inserted his frozen feet into the seal's body for warmth. Next, he heated the seal's fat in a cooking pot and applied it to his feet to treat frostbite, using strips of cloth as bandages. After a brief rest, Clemens Forell rose once again and continued his journey. In this desolate and never-ending snowy landscape, he could easily lose his mind. He had to rely on talking to himself, constantly maintaining his sanity. To avoid getting lost, he would use a compass to correct his direction after every stretch of walking. After a few more days of travel, he spotted a small tree in the snow. Clemens Forell was overwhelmed with joy and stumbled toward it, embracing the tree as if he had grasped a lifeline. This indicated that after 2 months of arduous escape, he had essentially left the frigid Arctic Circle behind. Meanwhile, the prison warden refused to give up and continued to expand the search range, issuing a wanted notice and setting up checkpoints. Clemens Forell had already entered the forest, but to his surprise, a sudden blizzard arose shortly after he started walking. The winds were so strong that they could lift him off the ground, and even sturdy trees were uprooted. Just as he stood up, a large tree fell behind him, hitting him underneath. Luckily, 2 passing bold prospectors rescued Clemens Forell from his predicament, and so the 3 of them helped and supported each other as they journeyed together. As the season of rejuvenation arrived, they decided to travel down the river on a makeshift raft. They enjoyed the beautiful scenery and engaged in lively conversations, sharing their life stories. However, the river suddenly became turbulent, and Clemens Forell and Matan couldn't control the raft's direction. Eventually, Semyon lost his balance and fell into the river. Seeing Semyon about to be submerged by the rushing waters, Clemens Forell disregarded his own safety and immediately jumped in to rescue him. It was a struggle, but he managed to pull Semyon back to shore. Meanwhile, Matan abandoned them and rowed the raft away alone. Upon returning to their shelter, Clemens Forell assumed that Semyon had drowned. Thinking he had struck gold, he stole all of Semyon's precious belongings. But to his surprise, Semyon returned just in time. Faced with Matan's heartless betrayal, Semyon took decisive action and ended his life with a gunshot. The 2 remaining companions packed their belongings and set off on their journey once again. Soon, winter arrived, and the journey back home became increasingly difficult. Clemens Forell intended to share the burden of Semyon's belongings, but Semyon mistook his intentions for an attempt to steal his gold. In a swift motion, Semyon struck Clemens Forell with his back, causing him to tumble down the mountain. The impact rendered Clemens Forell unconscious. When he regained consciousness, he found himself surrounded by a pack of wolves closing in on him. Clemens Forell quickly planted a small tree, but the wolves persisted, tearing at his pant legs with their jaws. Despite his efforts, the tree was eventually snapped, and he was on the verge of becoming the wolves' meal. At that moment, gunshots rang out in the distance. Several wolves had been killed, and it turned out local herders had come to his rescue. They brought Clemens Forell back to their village, where the compassionate herders took care of him. With their help, Clemens Forell's body quickly recovered, and the warmth he experienced after so long made him feel a sense of belonging. He developed a deep friendship with the herders. However, the prison wardens wanted notice reached the village, leaving him with no choice but to continue his escape. Before his departure, the herders provided him with supplies and gifted him a hunting dog. The journey back home became less lonely with a loyal dog by his side. And so, they traveled together for another year. One day, they arrived at a lumber mill. The hungry dog ran straight into the logging area in search of food, but was driven away by the workers when Clemens Forell called out. The workers recognized him immediately. The owner of a lumber mill first offered him food and drink, and then arranged for Clemens Forell to board a train bound for Germany. With his homecoming within reach, a radiant smile appeared on Clemens Forell's face. However, he was unaware that the lumber mill owner had reported him that prison warden had already assembled soldiers and was waiting at the train station. Fortunately, Clemens Forell noticed the unusual situation and managed to evade the soldiers by circling around the train. Unfortunately, he was caught by the prison warden at the crucial moment. Just as all hope seemed lost, the hunting dog bravely intervened, pouncing on the warden and fiercely biting him. Its loyalty brought Clemens Forell another chance to escape. Hearing gunshots behind him, the hunting dog was shot dead. Clemens Forell couldn't dwell on his grief and continued running. In a moment of urgency, he climbed onto an overpass and jumped onto a passing train. Once again, he narrowly escaped. And so, he traveled tirelessly, moving forward. Time flew by, and it was now 1952. Clemens Forell, disheveled and penniless, stared humbly at a delicious plate of hand-pulled noodles. However, the owner promptly kicked him out. Feeling helpless, he approached a pancake vendor where the friendly girls welcomed him, but he had no money in his pockets. Sensing the situation, Clemens Forell left dejectedly. Suddenly, a kind-hearted girl broke off a piece of flatbread and had her child give it to Clemens Forell. Stifled by the boy's gesture, Clemens Forell hesitated for a moment before realizing he had been given a warm and steaming flatbread. However, this act caught the attention of a Jewish man. Clemens Forell took the flatbread and sought refuge in a nearby church, where he clasped his hands together and earnestly prayed. The Jewish man, who had followed him, witnessed the scene but did not report him. Instead, as a former prisoner of war himself, Clemens Forell brought him to his dwelling. After freshening up, Clemens Forell transformed back to his original appearance. The Jewish man even provided him with a passport and travel documents. Overwhelmed with gratitude, with a passport in hand, Clemens Forell arrived at the Soviet border. After the inspection, he was indeed allowed to pass. Suppressing his inner excitement, fearing he might burst into laughter, he finally tasted freedom. But just as he reached the midpoint of the sewer bridge at the border, a beam of strong light shone upon his face. Through the brightness, he recognized the familiar face of the prison warden. Clemens Forell panicked. It turned out the warden had been waiting there all along. He hastily glanced behind and realized he was still standing on Soviet soil, and the warden still had the authority to arrest him. Clenching his fists, Clemens Forell felt a deep sense of injustice. All those years of arduous escape seemed futile. However, to his surprise, the warden stepped aside, clearing a path for him. Clemens Forell couldn't believe it, but he cautiously walked past. The warden, as a soldier, had been ultimately won over by Clemens Forell's 7 years of courageous escape. That's why he chose to let him go. But as a soldier, he was the ultimate winner, and so Clemens Forell smoothly passed through the checkpoint. Overcoming numerous obstacles, he finally, on a snowy night, returned to his longed-for home. He observed his family's every move from outside the window. Then the heartwarming scene filled Clemens Forell with overwhelming emotions. At that moment, his wife and daughter prepared to leave for the church to pray, and Clemens Forell quietly followed behind them. Right then, his daughter seemed to sense something. She slowly turned around and suddenly saw her long-lost father. The two of them embraced each other in excitement. His wife also approached. gently caressing her husband's face. Their reunion to full their eyes felt like a dream. The family wept tears of joy.